Well, welcome back. We are in week 3. Wow. We're like in the middle of our second topic, our second part of this series of world history and English literature. And we are in the topic of the Atlantic world revolts. We're looking at ideas, the ideas that grew out of the Enlightenment, grew out of men, philosophers like John Locke, Hobbes, Rousseau, Montesquieu, all of these thinkers that, or whose ideas are beginning to really affect people all the way down through the societal ranks. It's not just sitting with the kings and the aristocracy, but it's starting to feed down. The commercial and the military revolution has put forth or has spread the ideas that people are thinking about throughout the known world, at least throughout the Western world. We don't want to disregard other parts of the world, but we're focused on the Atlantic world in this particular series. We looked at the American Revolution and how these thinkers influenced our founding fathers. Looked at the Declaration of Independence and found those thoughts embedded deeply into the thinking and the principles and the foundation of our country. And then looked at the Constitution as well, how the Declaration of Independence frames the Constitution, puts it within certain boundaries, sets it up on a certain sort of pedestal. And anytime the Constitution or people want to get the Constitution off of that pedestal, off of that foundation, the Constitution just fails and crumbles. I really appreciated everyone who joined us on our Zoom meeting, our midweek Zoom meeting last week when we discussed the theoretical question, which is not so theoretical anymore. How can a person of power, a person who has been bestowed upon by the people a certain amount of authority and power and liberty, how could that person or a group of people in that particular situation, how could they take more? How could they get more of your liberties? And the discussion went everywhere from, okay, they can get you to vote and we can get a majority of a vote, to all sorts of what some people would call conspiracy theories, but they all are working within the boundaries of the Constitution and the boundaries, at least the interpretive boundaries of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. It was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful talk. I hope many of you from last week were able to chat with other people. But this week we're going to jump the other side of the Atlantic. We're going to go from the New World, the colonies, British colonies, and we're going to jump back towards the east, and we're going to look at the French Revolution. So let's see how those ideas and philosophers influenced the changes in that part of the world. We're going to look at two areas. We're going to look at how new ideas birth new situations. Excuse me. What a morning. And then we're going to go into the French Revolution itself. Now, I have to preface this with a little bit of a warning. The French Revolution, to me, is not as neat, not as clean cut as the American Revolution. American Revolution, they came, they rose, they overtook, and they kind of established their new nation. And with the exception of the hiccup with the Articles of Confederation, it pretty much was solid within a relatively short amount of time. French Revolution, the French nation, the French people, not so much. Not so much. We're going to talk about the uprising, how it began, and how it takes us all the way into the first part of the 1800s before it ever really is resolved, sort of. But we're going to look at that as well. So we're going to look at this first part, the first part of this French Revolution. So what's this situation? Well, you have a lot of wars going on. France has been fighting with England. France has been fighting with England in the colonies, the British colonies, what we would call the United States now. They had the French and Indian War. They came and helped fight against the British when the United States, or when the colonists rose up for their independence and had the American Revolution. They've been fighting in India. They've been going back and forth. They're just a fight for the who's going to be king of the hill. And so financially, it's not in too healthy of a state. It's still run by a king, King Louis, and there are certain problems that develop. So let's take a look at what we got here. So 1774, King Louis the 15th dies. He dies of smallpox. He is hated by the people. And when I say the people, I don't mean everybody all the way down to the very bottom of the social hierarchy. I'm talking about the nobility, the parlement, the nobles, the people who have land. Those folks at this time are the ones that are the movers and the shakers. They're making things happen. But they don't like Louis because Louis is all about keeping the absolute monarchy. He's top dog. Nobody else has rights. And as these philosophers are talking about all men are created equal, all men are born free and equal and independent of authority, that authority, it belongs to the people and is given to those who are in rule or in government. It's not that government gives rights and liberties to the people. It's the other way around. And these ideas are starting to get in the hearts and minds and conversations of the people below the king, and it's stirring them up. So when King Louis dies, the 15th dies in 1774, his grandson, King Louis the 16th, is encouraged to take over, and he rises, and he's not a big revolutionist. He really is kind of just a nice guy, educated, but he's not really a powerful figurehead of state. He kind of goes along with what everybody wants. He wants to make people happy. Sadly, even though he's known as the reformer of the liberties during the French Revolution, he gets guillotined. He gets beheaded shortly thereafter in 1789. So, 1788, 1789, Louis the 16th is there. He's kind of figuring out what's going on. He has some problems. His situation is France is bankrupt, and it's because they fought all these wars overseas. That's the situation. What is he going to do? Well, he has to weigh the problems and the opportunities. What are the good and the bad? Well, one of the bads is he has no money. He knows that has to change. He knows that he needs to raise taxes in order to get that money. Well, there's a problem with doing that. He remembers his granddad who tried to raise taxes to pay off all of the other wars, and he got fought left and right and didn't get anything. So what is he going to do? Well, he decides he's going to call the Estates General. And when I say estates, think of social classes. That's how I have to think about it. The estates of the country, the top estates, the top people, the middle people, and the lower people. Well, in this case, Parliament, the intermediaries, the ones who are supposed to be protecting the people's rights and liberties, according to the philosophers, they are consisted of three groups. The first estate, the sort of esteemed estate, would be the clergy. That would be the Roman Catholic Church, the priests, the bishops, the archbishops, things like that. Second estate was the nobility, those who owned land, the lords, the ladies, the dukes, and the earls. The third estate was others. And that's the best way to say it. They are all the others, everybody else. And he's going to pull these estates together, gather them kind of like a Congress, kind of like a parliament, bring them together and ask them, would you please give me taxes so that I can have revenue for our country? They're not going to do well with that, by the way. Others, in this case, still are not really the lower class of people, the ones who are just scraping by. They may or may not have land. They probably don't have any land. They may not have a decent business. They may be the serfs. They may be the farm workers and the general laborers. But when this third estate is convened and people are drawn together, that those others that come, they're not the lower people. They're the lawyers, the business owners, they're the merchants who are still considered sort of lower class, but at least they have some money in the game. They want to see things changed. But isn't it interesting that you have this grouping together that's going to make decisions for the nation, and two of the three are the top tier. And then only one group gets the other vote. Oops. So, who's going to influence this change from absolute monarchy under Louis XV to something else, something that's more for the people? Who's going to influence this? Well, of course the United States is going to influence, because the United States just won their independence. It's the biggest news on the globe. Hey, have you heard about what happened over in the British colonies? Those people rose up and they won their independence. I wonder if we could. Kind of get it? So these are influence. We have influencers on social media now that change the way we dress and what we do and what's cool and what's not. So United States was a major influencer during this time. Remember, France helped the United States win their independence. So the people that came and fought and helped, they went back and they talked about this win, this win for independence. They also know about the Declaration of Independence. That was 1776. So we're more than 10 years later, and Jefferson is now the ambassador to Paris. So what is Mr. Thomas Jefferson doing? He's helping the people over in Paris write their own Declaration of Independence. He's a big influencer. There are other philosophers that rise during this time. There's one by the name of Abbé, and I'm not French, sorry. Sieyès is his name. He writes something called "What is the Third Estate?" And he is going to influence it as well. He starts off his little essay that goes to all the people at Parliament and says, what is the third estate? Remember, third estate was the others. Well, he kind of does this in a sort of catechism, question answer. He poses a question and he answers his own question. He asks first, what is the third estate? And he says it's absolutely everything. If you think about a nation, its economy, its social interworkings, you're not dealing with just the very few percentage at the very top. They are not the ones that comprise the nation, comprise the country, the heartbeat of everything. It's the people who are getting their hands dirty, who are doing the work so that the people in the upper chains can enjoy that. So who are these third estate people? Everything is in the third estate. What has it been heretofore? Meaning, what political power, influence has this third estate had thus far? His answer, absolutely nothing. They're not even considered worthy of being invited to King Louis XVI's Estates General. They're too low. Yes, there are some others that are invited, but not many. Still, the majority of France, the majority of the population is elsewhere. So what does this third estate ask for? What do they want? What is their heartbeat and passion? Well, what they want is they want to become something. They want to be a part of their own government. They want their voice to be heard. This is not unlike what the colonists were saying. We want representation. We want a voice in our own laws. We want to be part of this social contract between those who lead, those in authority, and the rest of us. So, just to give you an idea of what the general estate looked like versus what the population of France looked like at this time. So you have 3 estates. The first estate, that's the Catholic clergy. They make up 1/3 of Parliament, 1/3 of the decisions. They made up less than half a percent of the total population of France at the time. Yet they hold almost 33% of the weight of decision making. French nobility, the aristocracy, those intermediaries that were up in the upper echelons of the courts, they are also 33% of all decision making, 33% of the weight of what's happening. Yet they make up only 1 or 2% of the total population. It's 98% that fit under that other category, but they're even of that 98%, only a small percentage of them, maybe like 20% of those, are actually involved and participating. The voice has not been driven down low enough so that the masses can be heard. So the question is why are the elite, why are less than 2.5% of the total population controlling and running everything? Why is that? And so the others are going to say, this is not cool anymore. We don't like that. And in 1789, they rise up and they storm the Bastille. They start their revolt. They start their revolution and they take over, and they actually win. They do it by overthrowing the Estates General. They kick them out and they establish a constitutional monarchy. Remember, King Louis XVI, kind of he's a compromising sort of king. He's going along. You want to revolt, go ahead and revolt. But these people, these others who have risen up, have convinced him to come from Versailles back to Paris and sort of rule in joint authority, so to speak, with the Parliament, the new Parliament, which is going to be the National Constituent Assembly. These folks are made up of that third estate. So the third estate sets themselves up as a kind of Congress or Parliament, and sets up the king as sort of a figurehead that's going to work with them, and they think they're going to work it together and everything's going to be great, and they come up with their own constitutional monarchy. Now, I've thrown this timeline in here just to give you an idea. We are way on this side already. But look at what has come before that, how much time has come before. The American Revolution is in there. The Declaration of Independence is back here. But as we move down the timeline, now into 88 and 89, 1788 and 1789, we're moving into new areas, new revolutions, so to speak, in France. And it's like this wave. It kind of came across like a tsunami from the British colonies and kind of just landed on the shores of France. You'll notice on the far side that the French Revolution in the green gets interrupted by what we call the First French Republic. That is going to be significant also, and we'll get into that here in just a moment, but I want you to keep in mind, this is where the French Revolution sort of gets messy. And we go through a whole bunch of different phases. So here, this first phase, this initial revolution, is from part of the others, part of the third estate. And they're going to rise up and they create their own sort of declaration of the rights of man and citizens. Should sound something like the Declaration of Independence, and it is, because the National Constituent Assembly write this declaration for France, this new France, with the help of Thomas Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson is influencing this declaration of the new France, this new constitutional monarchy. Mind you, they haven't thrown off the king completely yet. So what does this say? Listen to listen to the wording and see if it doesn't sound very familiar. So in Article 1, they say, men are born and remain free and equal in rights. That sounds really familiar. Social distinctions can be based only on public utility. Public utility meaning at the whim, at the will of the people, of the public, of the majority. That's how social distinctions differ. Now, in the colonies, we didn't have as many social distinctions. We didn't have lords and ladies and dukes and earls in the states and things like that as much. So this particular nuance is very French in its style. But can you see that all men are born equal? They're born free. That's very key. Article 2. The aim of every political association is the preservation of the natural and what the imprescriptible, which is inalienable, you can't take it away, rights of man. So here's this protection of the natural rights of man again. They are inalienable. What is missing from this particular one is this one doesn't specifically base its inalienability on the fact that it was God who gave all the people their rights. They just list it as natural rights. It's part of nature. Nature sort of gave it to them. And these rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. Those are all very similar to what we have in our Declaration of Independence. Article 3, the source of all sovereignty resides essentially in the nation. No body, no individual can exercise authority that does not explicitly proceed from it, from that body, from that nation. Now, this is a nuance also of France. This is not an early American sort of way of talking. Look at what it says. Where does sovereignty lie? Where does it originate? It is not we the people. It's in the nation. Nation becomes a big and new idea at this time. It is that single, united voice that takes over the authority. The individual people do not take over the power. They are not ascribed as being, each individual has his or her own individual rights and natural that they can defend. It is more of a joining together. All of us together, this national voice, this national people, we hold the power. The nation holds the power. But it's not in the people themselves specifically. And this is going to become important because between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, the initial part of the Constitution, finalized in 1789, all the way up to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizens in France, the United States did not have the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights is sort of the extra voice. It's the extra guarantee that the colonists felt were necessary to secure those rights even more than the Constitution by itself, the main part of the Constitution, allowed. They felt, you know what, this is still not a strong enough guarantee, we need more. And so the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizens from France actually influences back to the colonies the need for the Bill of Rights. And in 1791, it is ratified, it is brought up, written up, and then added to the Constitution. And that was just, as I said, to provide greater protection for individual liberties. Perhaps what they're seeing, what the colonists are seeing or hearing about in France, these mob rise-ups, this changing of who has power. Maybe they're looking at it. Maybe Jefferson's playing back with it a little bit. Madison and some of the other boys, they're coming back and they're kind of going, you know what? I don't think this is sufficient. We might end up like France, and we don't want to go quite that way. So Bill of Rights it rises up, and we have. So what do we have at the end of this section? This part 1. We have the rise up of the others. It's not all the others, but they have risen up. They've established a constitutional monarchy, meaning constitutional means there's expected norms, there are expected liberties, and a monarch who, in conjunction with Parliament, the National Constituent Assembly, are going to work together to make the world a happier place for the nation of France. And when we come back next time, we'll see, does it work? So go grab a break, go grab a snack, and we'll take a break and be right back.